The world didn't stop spinning when Ella whispered those words, it just felt like it did. Cold air bit into her skin, the weight of her soaked coat dragging against her weary shoulders. The crowd moved around her like a current, but she was sinking. Her arms tightened around her shivering toddler, his tiny body curled against hers for warmth and comfort. The ticket clerk looked at her with a kind of practiced impatience, and Ella's voice cracked under the weight of embarrassment and desperation. "I'm sorry, I can't pay." Her words didn't echo. They didn't rise above the station's noise. But they landed exactly where they needed to, into the ears of a stranger who wasn't supposed to stop, wasn't supposed to care, but did. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the silent power of human connection, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Stories Collection. These stories come from the heart, and your support helps us keep telling them. Ella hadn't planned to be at that station, not with an empty wallet and a child whose fever had come back during the night. Life hadn't exactly followed plans since the day she found herself pregnant at 19, abandoned by her boyfriend, and shunned by family who never believed in soft landings. Her father told her that choices had consequences. Her mother cried behind closed doors but never stepped forward to help. Friends scattered one by one, unable or unwilling to understand what it was like to cradle a newborn with one hand while trying to finish night classes with the other. It wasn't just money that Ella lacked. It was rest, hope, direction. That morning, she'd packed what little she owned into a second-hand duffel bag, tucked Aiden into 2 jackets, and walked 5 miles to the station. She wasn't running away, she was running towards something. A promise of work in a neighboring town. A friend of a friend who might help. Anything was better than the moldy basement apartment they had been calling home for the past year. She hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, but she'd made sure Aiden had milk and half a banana. She kept telling herself that hunger was survivable, but helplessness, that was something else entirely. As she stood at the ticket window, counting and recounting the coins in her palm, 40 cents short, the weight of everything collapsed. The clerk said he couldn't help. Rules were rules. Her knees nearly buckled under her. That was when she whispered it, softly, brokenly, and the stranger stepped forward. He was in his early 40s, wearing a pressed gray coat, his tie loosened from what looked like a long day. His eyes were the kind that had seen things but hadn't hardened because of it. Without asking questions, he pulled a $20 bill from his wallet and handed it over to the clerk. Ella's breath caught. She looked up at him, unsure whether to thank him or cry. But he just nodded, not as if he were doing her a favor, but as if this was what people should do. The train ride was quiet. She sat with Aiden curled on her lap, his small hand wrapped tightly around her finger. She watched the trees blur past the window and let the warmth of the heating vents soothe her face. But her mind raced with questions. Why would a stranger help her? Would her lead on the job work out? Could she keep doing this, fighting every day for the bare minimum? When she arrived in the new town, she met with the woman who had offered her a position as a receptionist at a local community clinic. The job wasn't glamorous, and it paid just above minimum wage, but it was honest, and it was hers. Her first paycheck went entirely to rent, groceries, and daycare for Aiden, but for the first time in a long time, Ella slept with a full belly and something dangerously close to hope in her chest. Weeks passed. She settled into the rhythm of routine. Drop Aiden at daycare, work 8 hours, pick him up, make dinner, read bedtime stories, crash on the couch for an hour of silence. She began to smile at coworkers. She began to laugh again. The exhaustion was still there, but it wasn't rooted in hopelessness anymore. It was the kind of exhaustion that meant she was building something. And then one Friday evening, as she was sorting medical forms behind the front desk, she looked up and froze. The man from the train station. He was standing there, looking slightly surprised himself. It turned out he was a physician volunteering part-time at the same clinic, Drive. Paul Whitman. He recognized her immediately and smiled. That moment passed like a ripple on still water. Ella stumbled over her words, trying to thank him properly. Of course. Here's the continuation and completion of the story, expanding its emotional arc to suit a full-length 6,000-word cinematic story, ensuring the pacing builds naturally to a touching and inspiring ending. The air in their small apartment always smelled like cinnamon and lavender now. Aiden would run to the door whenever Ella came home, his arms wide open, shouting, "Mommy!" as if it had been years and not hours. Those moments anchored her, kept her grounded when life still threatened to knock her down. The scars from those earlier years didn't vanish, but they faded. In their place came resilience. Paul had become more than just a doctor or a friend. He had become a fixture in their lives, steady and kind without ever overstepping. He never pitied her, Ella knew that. What he gave instead was respect, trust, and the quiet, wordless belief that she could still dream, even after everything. It took her a long time to let herself feel safe. Longer still to believe that love could exist without cruelty, without strings. They never labeled it, not at first. There were dinners, small holiday traditions shared together, laughter that filled rooms too long silent. Paul brought Aiden books, taught him how to plant flowers on the balcony, stayed up helping Ella study when her courses got tough. He didn't try to fix her, he just walked beside her while she rebuilt herself. But life, as Ella knew, didn't stop testing you just because you passed one trial. The clinic faced budget cuts, and her position was in jeopardy. She returned home one evening, eyes tired, hands trembling with the weight of another potential loss. She didn't cry in front of Aiden. Instead, she made macaroni and cheese, kissed his forehead, and waited until he slept to let herself fall apart. Paul found her on the balcony, arms wrapped around herself in the cold. He didn't say, "It'll be okay." He said, "Whatever happens, we face it. You're not alone." That night, for the first time, she let him hold her. Not just physically, but emotionally. She allowed herself to exhale years of pressure, heartbreak, and survival. In that moment, Ella realized she was no longer running. She was living. She was finally home. The clinic downsized, but a local school had seen her commitment and offered her a new opportunity, as a counselor's assistant working with young mothers trying to finish their education. The irony was poetic. Ella accepted the job with a gratitude so deep it made her cry in the principal's office. Her past wasn't something to hide anymore, it was something she could use to help others rise. She walked into her new workplace with her head high, her shoulders squared, and a worn photo of Aiden tucked in her bag. Every girl she worked with reminded her of who she had once been. And every time one of them whispered, "I don't think I can do this," Ella smiled and replied, "Neither did I, but someone believed in me." She would never forget that moment at the train station, the coldness of the air, the sound of her own voice breaking as she whispered, "I can't pay." It wasn't just about a ticket. It was the raw confession of a soul at the edge of giving up. But in that moment, someone heard her. And instead of walking past, he stood still. He changed the course of her life. Years later, Ella shared that story at a local charity gala where she was invited to speak. She stood behind a microphone in a flowing navy dress, hands only slightly shaking as she looked out at the audience. Paul and Aiden, now 8 years old, sat in the front row. She told them everything, not with shame, but with quiet courage. When she got to the part about the man at the train station who paid for her ticket without asking questions, the room was silent. She finished with these words. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness is the loudest answer to someone's silent prayer. I am who I am today not just because I fought, but because someone reminded me I was worth fighting for. The crowd stood, not because she had survived, but because she had turned pain into purpose. Afterward, Paul took her hand and whispered, "You know, I almost didn't stop that day. I was in a rush. I had calls to make. But something told me to turn around. Ella smiled, eyes glistening. And thank God you did. Their story didn't end there. Life kept moving. But so did they, together. They eventually married in a quiet backyard ceremony with twinkling lights and simple vows. Aiden was their ring bearer, proudly declaring he, finally had a real family. It wasn't the fairy tale Ella dreamed of as a child. It was better. It was earned. She kept working, helping more young women stand again. She wrote articles, started a community support group. And sometimes, when she walked through the train station on her way home, she would pause, just for a second, and look around. Remembering that version of herself, frozen in fear and shame. And she would whisper softly, "You made it." Because she did. If this story moved you, even just a little, please like, share, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Every time you engage, you help us reach someone who might be in the middle of their own storm. Speech balloon special request. Please comment, you are not alone, if you believe in hope, healing, and the power of compassion to rewrite someone's entire story. Your words might be the sign someone needs today.